Hi, very glad to see you on the channel. Before you start listening to the story, write in the comments whether you like the voice on the video. Lisa had a way of making me feel small without ever raising her voice. It wasn't obvious, not to anyone on the outside looking in. To the rest of the world, she was the perfect wife, smart, ambitious, effortlessly charming. But behind closed doors, she wielded her words like a blade, slicing at me piece by piece, so subtly that I didn't even notice how deep the cuts went. It started gradually, in ways I could explain away. A sigh when I forgot something on the grocery list. A forced smile when I made a joke at dinner with her colleagues. A quiet, cutting remark when I tried to bring up something that actually mattered to me. Then, over time, the dismissiveness became something more. We were at a family barbecue when I realized just how little respect she had for me. Lisa had been drinking, just enough to loosen the filter between her thoughts and her mouth. The topic of work had come up, and she, as usual, was the star of the conversation. "I don't know how you do it," her cousin said, shaking his head. "All that travel, all those high-stakes clients, it sounds exhausting." Lisa laughed, flipping her hair over her shoulder. "It is, but someone has to be the successful one in this marriage, right?" The table erupted in polite laughter. My jaw tightened. Her father smirked. "And Mark, you're still doing, what was it again?" "Real estate law," I said evenly. Lisa waved a dismissive hand. "He handles contracts and paperwork. Very thrilling stuff." The tone in her voice was light, playful. To anyone else, it would have sounded harmless. But I knew better. It wasn't a joke. It was a reminder. She thought she was better than me. I forced a smile, gripping my beer a little tighter. I wanted to say something to push back, but what was the point? Lisa was Lisa. She would twist it around, make me seem like I was overreacting. So like always, I swallowed it down. But for the first time, something inside me whispered that maybe I shouldn't. Lisa's jab at the barbecue stuck with me longer than I wanted to admit. I told myself to let it go, that it was just another offhand remark in a long list of them. But something about the way she had laughed when she said it, the way she had made it clear, in front of her entire family, that she saw herself as superior, kept replaying in my mind. For years, I had convinced myself that our marriage was just like this, that her dismissiveness, her little jabs, were normal, that this was just how relationships worked. But the truth was, I wasn't sure I even recognized the woman I had married anymore. And worse, I wasn't sure if she had ever really respected me to begin with. The next time it happened, I snapped. Lisa had invited some of her work friends over for dinner, a casual gathering, the kind where I was expected to play the role of the quiet, supportive husband while she entertained. I had no problem with that, at least not in theory. But I knew how these nights usually went. Idée pour drink. Smile at the right moments. Pretend not to notice when Lisa talked over me or made some subtle remark that made me sound like a helpless idiot. And like clockwork, that's exactly what happened. We were in the middle of dinner when one of her colleagues, a guy named James, turned to me. "So, Mark, I hear you're in real estate law. That must be pretty routine, huh?" Before I could even respond, Lisa laughed and jumped in. "Oh, you have no idea. Mark spends his days buried in paperwork. Contracts, zoning laws, it's riveting stuff." More laughter. I set my fork down. Lisa grinned at me, oblivious. "But hey, at least it pays the bills, right?" The table chuckled again. That time, I felt something break. I leaned forward, my voice calm but deliberate. "You know, Lisa's right. My job is routine, but it's also stable. And let's be honest, without my boring paycheck keeping her mortgage covered, she wouldn't have the luxury of traveling to all these conventions and staying in five-star hotels." The table went silent. Lisa's smile froze. I took a sip of my drink. It's funny, though. You'd think someone who spends all their time networking would have a little more gratitude for the person making sure she can. Lisa's jaw tightened, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't have a quick comeback. James cleared his throat, suddenly very interested in his wine glass. Someone else awkwardly changed the subject. Lisa didn't look at me for the rest of the night. When the last of the guests had left, she shut the door and turned to me, her arms crossed. "What the hell was that?" I shrugged. "What was what?" She narrowed her eyes. "Don't play dumb, Mark. You humiliated me." I let out a short laugh. "Did I?" "Yes." She threw her hands up. "You made it sound like I just spend money and do nothing." I tilted my head. "Oh, Kind of like how you make me sound like some boring idiot with a meaningless job. Her lips parted slightly. For a second, she looked almost shocked, like it had never occurred to her that I actually felt something when she made those comments. I exhaled. Lisa, do you even hear yourself? She scoffed. Oh my God, Mark, you're so sensitive. I clenched my jaw. And you're so disrespectful. Her eyes flashed. Excuse me? You act like you're above me. Like your job matters, and mine is just some side gig to keep you comfortable. You put me down in front of your friends and your family, and I'm supposed to just sit there and take it. She folded her arms tighter. It's not like that. I laughed under my breath. Really? Then tell me, when was the last time you introduced me as something other than Lisa's husband? Her mouth opened, but no words came out. That was all the answer I needed. For years, I had told myself that keeping the peace was more important than winning arguments. That letting Lisa have her way was just the cost of marriage. But in that moment, I realized something. I wasn't keeping the peace. I was letting myself disappear. And I wasn't going to do it anymore. Lisa didn't speak to me for 2 days after the dinner party. At first, I thought she was sulking, waiting for me to apologize to back down like I always did. But something was different this time. Her silence wasn't just anger. It was calculation. She wasn't just upset about what I said in front of her friends. She was thinking, trying to figure out how to reassert control. I had spent years bending to her moods, smoothing over arguments, letting her talk down to me because it was easier than fighting back. But after that night, I stopped caring. I didn't try to fix things. I didn't go out of my way to make her comfortable. And I think that scared her. The third morning, I was making coffee when she finally spoke. I have a work trip next week. Ich glänze woher. Yeah. She was leaning against the counter. Scrolling through her phone like this was just another casual conversation. New York. Big convention. Investors, high-profile clients, important stuff. I took a sip of my coffee. Sounds nice. She frowned, like she hadn't expected me to be so indifferent. I'll be gone for 5 days. I nodded. All right. She studied me, waiting for something, concern, jealousy, a sign that I still cared enough to chase her. I gave her nothing. Later that day, she sent me a text. Lisa, I need you to take my dress to the dry cleaners before Friday. It's the one I'm wearing to the investor dinner. I stared at the message, my stomach twisting. She hadn't said our dry cleaners. She hadn't asked me to pick it up when I ran errands. She had specified the investor dinner. Something about the way she worded it made my skin crawl. Lisa was careful with her words. She was meticulous. If she wanted to phrase something vaguely, she would. If she wanted to cover something up, she could. But she hadn't. She had pointed it out, like she wanted me to know. I set my phone down, my pulse steady. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. If I was right, if she was hiding something, I needed proof. That evening, while she was in the shower, I grabbed her laptop from the kitchen counter. Lisa never logged out her email. She was confident, careless, so certain that I'd never question her. She was wrong. I pulled up her inbox, scanning through the recent messages. At first, it was just normal work emails, meeting confirmations, client memos, expense reports. But then I saw it. A thread titled Penthouse Confirmation, New York Business Summit. I clicked. Lisa, your suite at the Paramount will be ready upon your arrival. Looking forward to seeing you again. Derek, I exhaled slowly, my grip tightening on the laptop. Lisa hadn't booked a normal room. Not a corporate suite. Not a company-covered stay. She had a penthouse. And whoever Derek was, he had made sure she was getting special treatment. I scrolled further, checking the earlier messages in the thread. Lisa's reply was short. Casual. Too casual. Can't wait. Same arrangement as last year? Same arrangement. My stomach twisted. I sat back, my pulse pounding in my ears. The pieces were coming together faster than I wanted them to. Lisa had met him last year. She had been with him last year. And now, she was doing it again. And she wasn't even trying to hide it. She had convinced herself that I was too stupid to look. That I was too spineless, too passive, too weak to ever challenge her. She had underestimated me. I closed the laptop carefully, setting it back exactly where I found it. My mind was already working through the next steps. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to cry. Lisa thought she was in control. She was about to learn how wrong she was. I sat in the dimly lit living room long after Lisa had gone to bed, staring at the black screen of the television. My mind raced, replaying every moment, every detail I had overlooked. How long had you been doing this? How many times had I ignored the signs, dismissed the gut feeling that something wasn't right? I wasn't angry. Not yet. The anger would come later. Right now, I was calculating. Lisa thought she had the upper hand. She thought she had me so thoroughly beaten down that I wouldn't even think to fight back. She was wrong. The next morning, I went about my routine as if nothing had changed. I made coffee. I kissed her cheek before she left for work. I played the part of the clueless, devoted husband while she packed for her trip, completely unaware that I already knew. I waited until she was gone before setting my plan into motion. First, I needed more than just a suspicious email thread. I needed undeniable proof. Lisa had always been meticulous with her privacy. Her phone was always locked, her work laptop was off limits, and her travel itineraries were stored in company portals I couldn't access. But she had one weakness. She never logged out of her personal email. I grabbed her laptop from the counter, opened her inbox, and scrolled deeper in her messages. There it was. A forwarded reservation confirmation from the Paramount. 2 guests. I clicked on the details. Appel tout de suite. 5 nights. And right underneath Lisa's name, listed as a secondary guest, Derek Whitman. Derek. My jaw clenched as I stared at the name. I didn't recognize it, but I didn't need to. I already knew who he was, the investor she had met at last year's event. The one she had spent weeks raving about after she got home, talking about how powerful and charismatic he was. I should have seen it then. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Reacting emotionally wasn't going to get me anywhere. I needed something bigger, something she couldn't explain away. I reached for my phone and made a call. Jacob, I said when my lawyer picked up, I need a favor. Jacob had been my closest friend since college, and, as luck would have it, he was also one of the best divorce attorneys in the state. There was a slight pause. Ryan, what's going on? I need you to start drawing up paperwork, I said, my voice steady. Lisa's cheating on me. A long silence. Then a low exhale. Tell me everything. I gave him the rundown, what I had found, where she was going, who she was meeting. Jacob listened without interrupting, and when I was done, his voice was sharp. You want to go for full exposure? I leaned back in my chair, tapping my fingers against the table. I want her to feel it, not just the divorce. I want her to lose. Jacob hummed in approval. Then you're going to need more than emails. You need undeniable evidence. I nodded. I'm working on that. By the time I hung up, I had a plan. Lisa's car had a built-in GPS tracker, something I had insisted on when we bought it, citing security concerns. She had rolled her eyes at me then, but now will be her downfall. I logged into the tracking app and set up real-time updates. I'd know exactly where she was when she checked into the hotel and when she met him. And then, for the final piece of my plan, I made a phone call to the Paramount Hotel. Hi, I'm calling about a reservation, I said smoothly. My wife, Lisa Reynolds, is staying in the penthouse suite this weekend. I need to confirm some details. The receptionist was polite, professional. Of course, sir. What do you need? I took a breath, forcing my voice to sound casual. Lisa asked me to arrange something special for her guest. Can you confirm if the second name on the reservation is still Derek Whitman? There was a short pause as the receptionist checked. Yes, sir. Derek Whitman is listed as the additional guest. That was all I needed. I smiled, though it didn't reach my eyes. Perfect. And just to clarify, she booked this suite privately, not through her company, correct? Another pause. Yes, sir. It was booked under her personal account. Lisa had paid for the penthouse herself. I thanked the receptionist, hung up, and leaned back in my chair. There it was. She had lied about everything. She had lied about the trip being company-funded. She had lied about networking. She had lied about what she was doing, who she was meeting. And now, I had everything I needed to burn her world down. I spent the rest of the day finalizing my plan. The divorce papers would be ready within a week, but I wasn't going to wait that long to make my move. No, Lisa had spent years treating me like an afterthought, making me feel like I wasn't worth the truth. I wanted her to feel what it was like to have the ground ripped out from under her. So I made a few more calls. First, to a private investigator, someone who could sit outside the hotel and get photographic proof of Lisa with Derek. Then, to one of Lisa's biggest clients. I introduced myself politely, explaining that I was Lisa's husband and had some concerns about professional conduct at the upcoming conference. A few carefully placed words, nothing directly accusatory, just suggestions, and suddenly, Lisa wasn't looking like the professional, polished event planner she had built herself up to be. By the time I was done, Lisa's entire world was primed for collapse. All I had to do now was wait. Lisa checked into the hotel Friday afternoon. I knew this because I watched the GPS update on my phone, tracking her every move like she was a case I was building in court. At 3:42 p.m., she arrived at the Paramount. By 4:07 p.m., she had checked in and made her way up to the penthouse suite. At 5:15 p.m., Derek arrived. That was all I needed. I had hired a private investigator, a man named Russell, who was stationed outside the hotel with a camera. At 5:25 p.m., he sent me the first picture, Lisa in the lobby, smiling at Derek, her hand casually brushing his arm. At 5:29 p.m., another. This time, they were stepping into the elevator together. At 5:34 p.m., Russell texted me. They're in. Wanted to wait for them to come back out. No, that's enough. Send everything over. By the time I had all the pictures, I wasn't even angry anymore. Lisa had made this easy. She had handed me everything I needed to destroy her, wrapped in a neat little bow, and I planned to use every bit of it. The next evening was Lisa's big investor dinner. She had been talking about it for weeks, how important it was, how securing a long-term contract with these clients could elevate her career. I had sat across from her at our dining table, listening to her go on and on about networking and opportunity, nodding along while she planned out the future she was building for herself. Funny how she had never mentioned me in those plans. Now, she was about to lose everything. I arrived at the restaurant 10 minutes after the dinner started. The place was high-end, white tablecloths, soft lighting, waiters gliding between tables like they were floating. Lisa sat at a large circular table near the back, surrounded by men in suits and women in expensive dresses, her smile dazzling, her laughter effortless. She had no idea what was coming. I walked straight to the table. Lisa's eyes flicked up, her expression freezing for half a second before she plastered on a smile. "Mark," her voice was light, confused. "What are you doing here?" I pulled out an envelope and placed it on the table in front of her. I thought I'd drop off some reading material. She frowned, reaching for it. As soon as she opened it, the color drained from her face. Inside were the photos. Lisa, smiling at Derek in the hotel lobby. Lisa, touching his arm. Lisa, stepping into the elevator, her body angled toward us like they were familiar. Lisa caught. The investors at the table watched as her hands trembled, flipping through the images. A man across from her, someone who looked important, raised an eyebrow. "Lisa, what is this?" Lisa swallowed hard, her eyes darting between the pictures, the investors, and me. This isn't, I leaned down, my voice calm. "Since you love luxury hotels so much, you'll need to book one tonight, because you're not coming home." Silence. Lisa's breathing was shallow. Her fingers gripped the envelope like she wanted to tear it apart, erase the evidence right in front of her. I straightened, sliding my hands into my pockets. "Oh, and I made sure a few of your potential clients got copies too, just in case they wanted to know what kind of professionalism you bring to the table." The important-looking man cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably in his seat. "Lisa, maybe we should reschedule this conversation." Lisa's head snapped toward him. "Mr. Hampton, I can explain." He held up a hand. "I don't think that will be necessary." Lisa's world was crumbling around her, and she knew it. I turned, giving her one last smirk. "Good luck, sweetheart." Then I walked out of the restaurant, leaving Lisa to drown in the wreckage of her own making. I didn't go home after I left the restaurant. I wanted to enjoy the city for a bit, breathe in the cold night air, and savor the feeling of knowing that for the first time in years, I had the upper hand. Lisa had spent so much time treating me like an afterthought, like I was something to be tolerated while she built her real life. But now, she was the one drowning. I imagined the scene after I left. Lisa is scrambling to do damage control, desperately trying to salvage the dinner. I pictured the looks on the investors' faces, their quiet whispers, the way they'd slowly start distancing themselves from her. No company wanted to be tied to a scandal. No wealthy clients wanted their names connected to someone who couldn't even keep her personal life in order. By the time I finally made my way back home, I was ready for the next phase. Lisa was going to come storming in, furious, demanding to know how I dared to expose her like that. And I was going to let her burn herself out. I didn't have to wait long. At exactly 11:17 p.m., the front door burst open. Lisa stood there, her face twisted in rage, hair slightly disheveled, her dress wrinkled from a night that had clearly gone very wrong. She slammed the door behind her. "You son of a bitch," she hissed. I took a sip of my whiskey, leaning against the kitchen counter. That's quite the greeting. She threw the envelope of pictures onto the floor between us. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, I don't know. Maybe the fact that my wife was sneaking off to a penthouse with another man." Lisa's hands curled into fists. "You didn't have to do that in front of everyone." I let out a low chuckle, shaking my head. "Oh, but I did. Because if I confronted you in private, you'd just gaslight me. Tell me I was overreacting, make up some excuse, twist it around until I felt like the bad guy." I leaned forward slightly. "This way? You had no way out." Her nostrils flared. "Do you know what you did to me tonight?" I just returned the favor. She let out a humorless laugh, pacing the room like a caged animal. "You think this is funny? I think it's justice." She stopped pacing and turned to face me, arms crossed. "So what now, Mark? You feel big? You feel powerful." I took another sip of whiskey, letting the silence stretch just long enough for her to squirm. "No," I said finally. "I just feel done." Her jaw tightened. "You don't mean that." I let out a short laugh. "Oh, you do. See, I've spent years thinking maybe I wasn't enough for you. Maybe if I worked harder, made more money, tried harder, you'd actually respect me. But you never did, because it was never about me. It was about you thinking you deserved something better." Lisa swallowed hard, but I wasn't done. "And you know what? You were right about one thing. I was weak. I did let you walk all over me." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "But I'm not that man anymore." Her lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to say something, but no words came out. I exhaled, setting my glass down. "I want a divorce." That snapped her out of it. "Mark, no," I said, cutting her off. "You don't get to talk your way out of this. You don't get to spin this." I grabbed a folder from the counter and tossed it onto the table. "The papers are already drawn up. I suggest you sign them before the rest of your life falls apart." Lisa stared at the folder like it might bite her. "You can't be serious." I folded my arms. "Oh, I am." She scoffed, shaking her head. "You don't have the guts to leave me." I smirked. "You thought I didn't have the guts to expose you either. How'd that turn out?" Lisa opened her mouth, then closed it again. For the first time since I had met her, she looked uncertain. She had always assumed I'd be there, no matter how badly she treated me. She had convinced herself that I was too passive, too safe, to ever truly leave. Now, she was realizing just how wrong she had been. She let out a shaky breath. "You don't understand. You're making a mistake." I tilted my head. "Am I?" Her voice dropped slightly, desperate now. "Mark, we've been together for years. You don't just throw that away over one mistake." I laughed under my breath. "One mistake." I gestured to the pictures still scattered across the floor. "That wasn't a mistake, Lisa. It was a choice. You chose to betray me. You chose to lie. And now," I picked up the divorce papers, flipping them open to the signature line. "I'm choosing to walk away." Lisa was breathing fast now, her mind scrambling for an argument that would work. "What about our life? Our friends? I'll be fine," I said smoothly. "You? Not so much." Her face twisted. "I made you." I smirked. "No, Lisa, you broke me. And now, I'm finally putting myself back together." She stared at me, her breathing shallow, her world collapsing around her. I slid the papers toward her one last time. "Sign them." Her fingers trembled, but she picked up the pen. And the moment she pressed it to paper, I felt free. Lisa didn't sign the papers that night. She picked up the pen, hesitated, then set it down like it burned her. Instead, she pushed the folder away and met my gaze with a look that was half defiant, half desperate. I need time, she said. I laughed under my breath, shaking my head. Time for what, Lisa? To come up with a new lie? To spin some story where I'm the villain? She straightened, regaining some of that old arrogance. To figure out how we fix this. There's nothing to fix. You don't mean that, she said, crossing her arms. You're just angry. I exhaled, looking at her like she was a stranger. No, Lisa. I was angry months ago. Now I'm just done. She blinked, as if the finality in my voice was finally sinking in. Then, her expression hardened. You think you can just walk away from everything we built together? I smirked. Lisa, you are the one who set everything on fire. I'm just making sure you burn with it. She flinched just slightly before scoffing. You're being dramatic. I grabbed the divorce papers, tucking them back into the folder. Fine, you don't want to sign them now? That's your choice. But don't think for a second that not signing means I'm staying. I walked past her, heading for the bedroom. I wasn't going to argue with her anymore. Lisa thrived on control, on manipulation, and the best way to beat someone like her was to refuse to play the game. She didn't follow me. The next morning, she was gone before I woke up. I wasn't surprised. Lisa didn't like being backed into a corner. She needed space to come up with her next move. And I had no doubt she was planning something. By midday, I got my answer. My phone buzzed with a message from Jacob, my lawyer. Jacob, heads up. Lisa lawyered up. She's fighting the divorce. I exhaled sharply, rolling my neck. Of course she was. Lisa couldn't win unless I lost. I called Jacob back immediately. What's her angle? She's claiming the exposure at the restaurant was intentional emotional distress and that it cost her professional opportunities, Jacob said, amusement in his voice. She wants a settlement. I let out a short laugh. She actually thinks she's getting money out of this? Looks that way. I shook my head. She must really be desperate. She is, Jacob agreed. And it's about to get worse for her. The client you tipped off? Yeah. They dropped her contract this morning. Word is spreading. Good. Lisa had spent years building her reputation. She had worked her way into the circles of high-powered executives, throwing me under the bus any time it benefited her. But she had made a crucial mistake. She had assumed that those same people respected her. They didn't. They tolerated her as long as she was valuable. But the second she became messy, the second she became bad par, she was disposable. And now, she was scrambling to keep from drowning. Jacob sighed. She's going to fight this, Mark. She won't go down quietly. I smirked. I wasn't expecting her to. For the next few weeks, Lisa tried everything. She tried to spin the narrative with friends, acting like I had blindsided her, like I was the jealous husband who had overreacted. She even tried reaching out to my family, which was laughable considering how little effort she had ever put into that relationship. Then came the settlement offers. First, she asked for spousal support, claiming that since I had ruined her career, I owed her financial stability. That one got thrown out immediately. Then, she tried to negotiate keeping the house, as if I was just going to pack my bags and let her live comfortably after what she had done. That got thrown out too. The legal battle was short, brutal, and one-sided. I had proof. She had nothing. By the time we reached the final hearing, Lisa looked nothing like the woman who had once strutted through life with untouchable confidence. She was thinner, her clothes slightly less polished, her eyes hollow with stress. She had lost her biggest clients. Investors were backing away. Her reputation, the thing she valued most, was in shambles. And I was walking away clean. The judge signed off on the divorce that afternoon. Lisa barely looked at me as she left the courthouse, her steps slow, almost unsteady. For a brief second, I wondered if she would say something. If she would throw out one last insult, one last attempt to hurt me. She didn't. She just walked away, and I didn't follow. That night, I sat in my new apartment, a modest place downtown, free of her presence, free of the weight I had carried for too damn long. I poured myself a drink, staring out the window at the city below. Lisa had spent years making sure I felt small. Now, she was the one who had been reduced to nothing, and I had never felt stronger. I woke up to sunlight streaming through my apartment window, no alarms, no weight pressing on my chest, no passive-aggressive sighs from Lisa filling the silence. Just peace. It had been 3 weeks since the divorce was finalized. 3 weeks since I had walked out of that courthouse, leaving Lisa behind in the wreckage of her own making. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was constantly bracing for impact. I didn't have to anticipate the next insult, the next cutting remark, the next time she would undermine me in front of an audience just to make herself feel bigger. Lisa was gone, and I had never felt more alive. I poured myself a cup of coffee and stepped onto my small balcony, looking down at the city below. Everything felt different, brighter, like I had been walking through life half asleep and was finally waking up. I had spent years making my world smaller for Lisa. Now, it was time to start taking it back. The first step was reclaiming my career. Lisa had always dismissed my job, acting like it was just paperwork while she was out sealing high-profile deals, but the truth was I was good at what I did. I had built a strong reputation in real estate law, and now that I was no longer wasting my energy trying to keep a crumbling marriage intact, I was ready to push my career forward. I called an old friend, Jason, a guy I had gone to law school with who now ran a boutique firm specializing in real estate and contract litigation. We had always talked about working together someday, but Lisa had never liked the idea. She preferred that I stay in my safe, stable job while she got to take all the risks. Not anymore. Jason picked up on the second ring. "Mark, heard you finally dumped the dead weight." I smirked. "That obvious?" "Oh, everyone knows, man. Lisa's downfall has been the talk of the industry. You wouldn't believe the number of people who are thrilled to see her finally eat dirt." I raised an eyebrow. "That bad?" Jason let out a low chuckle. "You have no idea. She burned a lot of bridges over the years. People just put up with her because she was good at what she did. But the second her reputation started slipping, they dropped her like a bad investment." I leaned against the railing, letting that sink in. Lisa had spent years acting like she was untouchable, like she was the only one who mattered in any room she walked into. And now, she had no allies left. Jason cleared his throat. "So listen, I wasn't just calling to gossip. I wanted to make you an offer." I raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." "I want you on board at my firm. Not as some junior associate, not as just another guy in the office. I want you as my partner." I stilled. "Jason, that's a big deal?" "Yeah, I know. But you deserve it, Mark. You're sharp, you're strategic, and let's be real, your name's already floating around as the guy who took down Lisa Reynolds. That's good for business." I let out a slow breath, staring out of the skyline. A few months ago, I never would have considered this. I would have hesitated, thinking about how Lisa would react, whether she'd approve, whether it would be convenient for her lifestyle. But Lisa didn't matter anymore. I smiled. "I'm in." The next few weeks flew by. I threw myself into work, finalizing my transition to Jason's firm, meeting new clients, proving, if only to myself, that I had always been capable of standing on my own. Meanwhile, Lisa's struggles continued to unfold like a slow-motion car crash. I hadn't spoken to her since the divorce was finalized, but the whispers made their way back to me regardless. The investors she had counted on to salvage her career had backed out. More and more of her professional connections were distancing themselves. Then came the real blow. Lisa's company fired her. I got the news through a mutual acquaintance, a former colleague of hers who had always been more friendly with me than with Lisa. "She's out," the text read. "They let her go yesterday. Guess they didn't want the liability of keeping her on after the scandal. She's pissed." I let out a slow breath, setting my phone down. It was over. Lisa had spent years making me feel like I was replaceable, like I was just a supporting character in the grand production that was her life. Now, she was the one left with nothing. And I had never felt more free. Thank you for listening to the end. I hope you enjoyed it very much. Don't forget to give a like and tell us in the comments what you would do in such a situation.